Hello everyone, I am here with Rangers royalty. I'm going to describe this career to you before we introduce the man himself. Early career league winner and European Cup semi-final with Dundee United. Transferred to Tottenham Hotspur, captain Spurs in the 1987 FA Cup final. Then Rangers come calling. First ever £1 million transfer to a Scottish club, went on to have 9 league medals from 1987 to 1997, 3 Scottish Cups, 6 Scottish League Cups, Hall of Fame, in the Rangers' greatest ever team, captain of Rangers Football Club. As I said, Rangers royalty, Mr. Richard Gough. Richard, thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Stevie.
Let's just go straight into it. We could spend, I think, hours, and I'm lighting up even just thinking about it. This was my era. But why Rangers? Well, let's journey back to 1987. Why Rangers at that point in your career? You're flying high. Tottenham captained the FA Cup final. Why Rangers?
Rangers was always in the family. My father, grandfather were Rangers supporters, and when I first came to Scotland as a kid, when I was 16, 17, I had a trial at Rangers because that was the way I wanted to play. Didn't work out that way, but I went to Dundee United at a good time where it was a very good manager, Jim McLean, and there was another man there that was going to have an influential, big influence on my career, Walter Smith, playing in the reserves, and he was a coach at the time. Had success at Dundee United, winning a league when we were younger, getting to a couple of cup finals and getting to, you're right, you said, the European Cup semi-final, and played with some terrific players there, you know, Neri, Hegarty, Bannons, Ralphie Milne, Paul Sturrock, Davy Dodds. So I had some real good players, you know, as a youngster. Then in '86, I think when Graeme Souness was coming to the club and Walter had gone to Rangers at that time, I think Rangers tried to get me from Dundee United then, but Jim McLean wouldn't sell. I went down to Tottenham and had a very good season at Tottenham, and I think it was the October of that '87 that Rangers put in a bid that Tottenham accepted, and the chairman came to me down at Tottenham and asked if I was willing to go up to Rangers. English teams weren't in Europe at that time as well, from '86 to '91, so that was a thing. And a lot of the, I'd seen what happened the year before with Terry Butcher and Chris Woods, and a lot of good English players going up to Rangers, and I just thought they were on the verge of something big. And I signed for the club on October the 3rd, 1987. And I always say, people ask me what was your best moment in a Rangers jersey, and I always say, well, my 3 best moments, I never had a jersey on. And that's also, it was like a trick question, because the first was signing for Rangers, the second was when Graeme Souness pulled me into his office to become captain of Rangers, and the third was 9 in a row when I was in a suit. So that's also a wee trick question. So I made the decision to come up at that time, and spent 11 years at the club, and a lot of people said I should have stayed where I was at Tottenham. I'm sure I would have had a good career there. I could have most probably gone to Manchester United at that time as well, and I saw something on the Rangers TV that Sir Alex Ferguson had wanted me at that time, just when I was coming up the road. But I don't regret anything about the 11 years I had with Rangers Football Club during my time here. It was a magnificent period for the club, and won 18 trophies or 18 medals with the club, and so my memories of that time are, just fantastic memories, and always will be.
Graeme Souness was revolutionising the club at that point. I think that's a fair description. Things were changing, and it became a bit of an attitude era, and everything swung for Rangers. in terms of perhaps becoming the club that we would want them to be. What was Graeme Souness like to work with?
Graeme was fantastic. You got to remember Rangers in that time in the early 80s, you know, wasn't the club that it was going to become, I think, you know. Rangers were going through not a great time during that period. But I knew Graeme from the international team, the Scotland team, so I'd met Graeme as a person and as a player. He was my captain, you know, in 1983, so he had known me for 3 years before he tried to sign me. So he knew what I was about, I knew what he was about, and I just thought he was my type of person that I'd like to play for. He was very direct with everyone. He didn't stand up for any nonsense, and I enjoyed playing for him. I thought he was a good manager. He was different in the way he handled all the players the same, but he kind of liked strong physical, I think, people. With a bit about them. You just need to look at the back fours, myself, Gary Stevens, Terry Butcher. So played against Dundee, signed John Brown because John Brown kicked him up and down the field or something, you know. So he said, he'll do that he'll do for us, you know. So no, I had a lot of respect for him, and I still speak to him on a regular basis.
That era, maybe people point to it and point to the signing of Maurice Johnston as being the biggest kind of moment in Graeme Souness's career, and it often gets overlooked just how good Maurice Johnston was as a player. But at that point at Rangers, we had some incredible players: Trevor Stephen, Maurice Johnston, just to name a few, Ali McCoy, Ian Durrant, all doing really special things. And if you would split your time at Rangers into two, and we have the Souness period and then the Walter Smith period, which we'll come to, who do you think was the standout player of the Graeme Souness era? And that's a difficult question, so you're allowed to say yourself.
No, a difficult question.
But
I think,
we had so many good players, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. We had so many good players. We had terrific players. You know, we had terrific Scottish players, including David Cooper at that time as well.
Yep. So
terrific players for the club. McCoy was fantastic during that period as well. For me, you know, the change happened when Graeme managed to get Terry Butcher to the club. I think in a lot of ways, you know, he was a fantastic player, and it was something the club hadn't seen before. The quality of that, you know, when I can remember, I think I actually played against Rangers just before I went down to Tottenham, and they had the new team, and actually we beat Rangers 3-2 at Ibrox that day. But we knew there was the whole Scottish football, and it revolutionised Scottish football. With all the English players coming up, and the quality of the English players that come up. Graeme went on to get Ray Wilkins, 82 caps for England. You know, I mean, there was some fantastic players at Football Club. Mark Walters. You know, so just brilliant. It was a brilliant, like you say, the first period of that time, the late 80s. You know, it was a terrific time to play for the football club. And terrific players.
Graeme would come to leave at a pivotal moment. Walter would come in. Rangers would manage to win the third title, and Walter would have to change because European football would change with the three foreigner rule and things like that, and a whole host of new players come in, including some players that are now Hall of Famers and looked at upon as some of the greatest players that have ever played for this football club, including the likes of Andy Gorham. Rangers would go on a remarkable time under Walter to go all the way to 9. Let's talk a wee bit about Walter Smith. There's not much you can say about Walter. He was an incredible man.
Yeah, incredible.
But what was he like? You said that he was an early influence at Rangers on you coming up the road, but him becoming manager That was. Can you talk us a wee bit through about the process of him becoming the manager, and was the dressing room fully united behind Walter? And it's such a big thing, especially at that point where we were going for a title, and you had St Mirren away, Motherwell away, and then Aberdeen at home. Critical, the club would come through it, but how big was Walter and as a figure of the club? It's probably a silly question because we know how big Walter is, but can you describe Walter to us?
Yeah, I think he was, first of all, he was an incredible human being. You know, I met him at 17 years old at Dundee United. I didn't know the influence we would have on each other's careers, really. I was involved in football. If I was involved in football for 21 years, he was involved in 20 of them. If you know, because I had my last 2 years with him at Everton as well.
Absolutely.
So we knew each other inside out. We had an incredible trust within each other. And I can remember, like I said, you know, I loved Graeme Souness as well, and I got a phone call that David Murray wanted to see me. You know, the next morning at Ibrox, and he asked me on the phone, did I know what it was about? I said, yeah, I did, because an English reporter had phoned me and said Graeme Souness was going to go to Liverpool at the end of the season, which he was obviously agreed to go to Liverpool in the 91-92 season. And when I went into Ibrox that morning, David Murray said to me, I just got you in early, Richard, because I've called a press conference and just want to make sure that Walter Smith will have the respect of all the players and stuff like that, you know. So I said, yeah. I said, you know, total respect of all the players in the dressing room. And he said, well, that's good, because Graeme wants to stay here till the end of the season, but he's leaving today. So that was a big shock to all of us at the football club, because I thought that Graeme would just carry on until the end of the season. So that was a hell of a decision, big decision by David Murray to do that. And that showed the strength of the chairman at that time. And I can remember we beat St Mirren.
Yep, Sandy Robertson had that kind of overhead kind of kick, didn't he?
Yeah, we beat St Mirren, and then I can remember I got sick of all things. I picked up hepatitis from something, and I went into a hospital, and the boys we lost at Motherwell, lost 3-0 at Motherwell, and that was a big.
Walter used to call that the Archie Knox game, because that was Archie's first game. I remember Walter told me that actually.
Exactly, and then but we had so many injuries. I mean, McCoy, Durant, they were injured. John Brown was playing with an Achilles problem. You know,
he actually snapped his Achilles and played on, which shows you what John was like.
That was
against Aberdeen.
Yeah. He had injections and everything, you know. So we were walking wounded, you know, and you know that last game, and I can remember I was in Ross Hall. At the when we won the thing, and that was a pivotal moment in Walter's career for me, because if we hadn't won that championship, then I wouldn't say Walter wouldn't have been fired or anything, but it would have changed the outlook of the whole thing, you know. We wouldn't be going for 9 in a row. We would, you know, like later, you know, and that just, you know, gave him you know, in the Rangers supporters, you know, gave the Rangers supporters faith that he was the right man for the job. You know, the way that we finished off that title, you know, in that season, and then from then on, we had to get the Scottish players in from then, because there was a massive turnover of players, and I can remember speaking to him about a few of the Scottish players that we were going after, and we got in Gorham, we got in David Robertson, we got in Stuart McCall, we got in Gordon Jury, we got in David McPherson. I'm trying to think of any other ones that we've got in. So we got in a lot of good ones. We had Morris Johnson at the club already. So we're the basis of a real good team. What it did, it knocked us up in Europe a wee bit, you know. But domestically, we were still very strong.
Yep. So Walter would obviously have a couple of fantastic seasons. We would do that. I kind of split that 9, rightly or wrongly, into sections. You have the Souness section, then you have that middle section which I call the kind of McCoist-Haitley section, and then you've got the Loudrup and Gascoigne later kind of section where, and I think they were all different but wonderful teams in ways.
Because we had to change the way
we played.
We played a wee bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to come back to what I consider to be one of Rangers' greatest ever seasons, the 92-93 season, but I'm going to talk a wee bit about Gascoigne and Loudrup and that push for 9 in a row. The dressing room, I remember even as a young boy for myself, it became fever pitch. It was all about 9. What was it like dealing with that pressure?
Well, after we won 8, you know, like I said, we changed the way we played a wee bit at the back when we got Gascoigne and Loudrup, because they were 2 free spirits in a lot of ways. So Walter came to me at the beginning of the one season and said, we're going to play 3 at the back and you'll have 2 full-backs, whether it was David Robertson and it was Ali Cleland or whatever on the one side, and you can make it a 5 quite quickly because we want to get Gascoigne and Loudrup on the ball as quickly as possible, type thing, you know, and they can create. So we changed the way. I had Alan McLaren alongside me, and Bomber and Gordon Petric. So all players like that, you know. So all good players. So we did change the way we played, but after we won the 8th title, which was the famous game at home against Aberdeen, where Gascoigne scored a hat-trick, I can remember already thinking about the next season, because it was going to be 36 cup finals. I thought, and I sometimes think back to this and think we had a good team then, and we didn't do as well in Europe as we should, because I think we were just game after game after game after game, and you know, like if you look at now at all teams, they rest players now, but we couldn't rest anyone because we had to play our strongest team in every league game, you know, and thankfully we managed to get the 9 in a row. We were lumped over in the end, you know, but we managed to get it, you know, so it was a huge accomplishment, because if we hadn't got it and matched Celtic's 9, it would have been a huge disappointment, and that was, for me, was a big relief, you know.
A lot of players say that when we speak to them about 9 in a row, they'll talk about how great it was, but a load of people would say relief. It's a word that comes because there was so much pressure on. I genuinely remember as a youngster, started to go around about 6, 7, and all people were even singing about that point was 9 in a row. So to actually live that with that pressure. And I remember on the way to 8 in a row going to Kirkcaldy to play Wraith and being 2-1 down.
Winning 4-2.
And winning 4-2, and McCoist and Jury gets a late penalty and stuff like that. Some of these games were incredible. And the spirit of that group. And that's what I want to come to next, that dressing room. You've spoke a lot about it. A lot of players have spoke a lot about the kind of culture and how good was that dressing room? Because we look at that era now, Richard, and there's so many players that are now Hall of Famers. The best players that we ever consider playing for Rangers were in that group.
Yeah, I think it was fortunate that we had a good group of players round about. Well, as me as a captain had a good group of players round about me who were good leaders as well, you know, and they're very, very strong-minded. Let's put it that way, you know.
See the stories about the likes of Bomber and that, when he used to be in the dressing room and hyperventilating and getting ready. Is that all true?
Well, against Celtic they were, yeah. But I mean, we all knew, you know, we were very close. We were very close as a bunch of players as well, you know. Like I got tagged with the team that drinks together wins together. It wasn't really true. I mean, if we drank as much as we were supposed to, we wouldn't have been winning all the medals. You know, maybe once, you know, I normally usually, I would say to the gaff, if we lost a game, and we didn't lose too many, maybe we lose maybe 3 or 4 games a season, but if we lost a game, then I would take the boys out and we would go somewhere, you know, we would, you know, say to the gaffer, well, we need to just have a wee blow off, or, you know, and just, I would take the boys out and he would give us a training off the next day and we'd just have a few beers together, you know. But it wasn't, it was more just a get together, you know. We weren't going out every weekend and getting, you know. I mean, I was hardly at the house at you know, when we were going for those, you know, when as a professional football player, you never. But I think it just got exaggerated a wee bit, you know, after the stuff, you know. But it was a very close bond, you know, the players had, and I think that was part of the. Like, I mean, someone asked me the question the other day: was there any bad eggs in the dressing room, you know? And I went, no, because they wouldn't be allowed in there, you know. It wouldn't be, or they would have left the club pretty quickly, you know. So it was a good. You know, and we welcomed any new players coming to the club very quickly as well, and integrated them into the process very quickly. And winning helps a lot when you're winning. You know, it's a great.
Yeah.
It's a great.
It helps the spirit, certainly.
It helps the spirit, and it also, you know, helps the togetherness. And, you know, I mean, I used to say, you know, you'll find out about your group of players when you lose it. You know, and we did. We went through a few tough times and. We managed to get through them, you know, so it was good about the whole dressing room.
One of the best seasons in my Rangers supporting life was growing up during that 92-93 season. Everybody talks about it, treble winning, so close to ultimate glory, European Cup. I spoke to a lot of players in that era, like Mark Hateley and Ferguson, talk about that season, but let's talk a wee bit about that. We could probably talk for hours, I think, Richard, but very quickly talk about the likes of Leeds, Marseille, the European run before we touched domestically. How big was that? Silly, it's silly, isn't it? Asking you how big it is. We know how big it was, but
I think it was, you know, like myself, McCoist, Hateley, certain players were at an age we were all about 30 years old then, around, you know, give and take a wee bit, and we were just very experienced by that time, so we knew the tricks in the trade, you know, type thing and stuff like that, and we just had a good team, you know. We had a really good team, and we got off to a good start in the European stuff, and we went on, I think it was about 44 game unbeaten run. We got through against, I'm trying to think back now, we got through against first game
Lyngby.
Qualifier was Lyngby. We Durant scored over there. We beat them at home 2-0.
Yep.
And we Durant scored. And then the second game was Leeds in the qualifier. And it was funny that, you know, I got reminded today that was the first Champions League.
Yeah, that's right.
92-93.
Yeah.
And there was 8 teams. You know, so there was 2 qualifiers before, and then 8 teams, and we were one of the teams. But when we drew Leeds United, it was you know, it was obviously the Battle of Britain. You know, that always comes up when the big teams play against each other, the Scottish and English teams. And they had 2 Scottish players, you know, good Scottish players playing for them, and McAllister and Strachan as well. So that was another, you know, thing to it. But they had a good team. Other than their 2 centre backs, I didn't think were the highest quality, but everything else in their team was, you know, was decent. I mean, they had Cantona,
speed. Yeah.
The midfield was Strachan, McAllister, Batty.
Yeah.
And what's the point of the left wing? You know, it was just a good side. They'd won the English Championship the year before, beating Manchester United. You know, so they were a good team. So when they came up here, McAllister scored in the first minute. I can always remember the crowd got right behind us when, by the time we got the ball up to the centre circle again, there was a huge crowd were erupting, you know, so they were right behind us, you know, and but I think they knew we were a decent team, you know. We managed to get the 2 goals, 2-1 up, and then I can always remember, funny enough, that night that Batty played very well for them in the middle of the park. And before we went down to play Leeds, he got injured on the Saturday. And I said to Walter, I said, he's going to make a difference, you know, for us, because he did well at Ibrox, you know, because he was a tough wee player. And our midfield was, you know, Stuart McCall and Ferguson, you know, so we had a tough midfield as well, you know. And I said, I think they're going to miss him, you know. And I said to the press, I did a press thing before this, I said, I'd like to score early down at Ellen Road to see how they reacted. Because it's a shock, if you know, like, it was a shock to us, but we overcome the shock of it. And right enough, 2 minutes in, Haley scores, fantastic goal. And they didn't react to it as well as we reacted to it, you know, and we played really well on the night. We defended well. Gorham.
People say that was Andy Gorham's finest moment.
Nah,
he had so many.
A few more, but he had a couple of saves from Cantona. But I mean, Gorham was just good most of the time. You know, I mean, you know, I wouldn't say it's his finest moment, but I mean, I think he had a few more finer moments at Parkhead, I think.
He was incredible, Gorham.
Yeah, he was a good goalkeeper, just a good goalkeeper, good lad. But yeah, so we won the game quite comfortably. We were 2-0 up. Comfortably, they got a late goal, put it on the edge a wee bit, but it was quite comfortable for us.
How big was the Champions League? Marseille, Bruges, CSK, Moscow, getting to that game in France where it was one game away from being.
Yeah, and I think that was.
Forget about the kind of. We know what happened afterwards, and there's a wee bit of resentment there. But the actual taking them so close, how did that feel?
So we were a physical team. I always tell people we were a physical team. They came to us in November, around about November, and they played at Ibrox, and it was a wet night, and we were physical. They kicked us off the park at Ibrox. They battered us. They had Bolly, they had Desai, they had Angloma, they had Barthez, they had Desai, they had the boy who went to Hibs, Sousie, and up front they had Voller, Boksic, and Ibiri Pele. That was the best club team that I'd ever played against. Most probably still to this day, you know, because they were fantastic, a really good team, and we managed to get. I was off at half time because I'd run into Boksic, or he had run into me and gave me a dead leg, which I ended up in Ross Hall again, getting blood taken from my leg because it was a good Charlie horse. But we finished up ending up going there to Marseille, and if we could get a win in Marseille, we would go through to the, you know, to. And I tell kids that today, you know, or people, we were like in the semi-final of, you know, or you know, the Champions League, and they, you know, Scottish team, how can you be in the Champions League and, you know, semi-final? I said, that's what it was, you know, because if we'd got there, or if they hadn't beaten, you know, if we had beaten the Russian team at home and they'd lost in Bruges, we would have got there as well. But if we had won the game in Marseille, we would have got through to the final.
I was 10. I still remember that feeling when Trevor Stevens swings at it and Durant hits that. I still remember that.
I remember it well because I was right behind Lee Durant when he hit it, you know, and Sounsley scored early doors for them, but they were panicking the last, you know, because they you know, as you just go back, you know, when that one team needs to win it and you need a draw, you just kind of go back the way. And I think if Mark Haley had played that night, it would have made a difference. But he got sent off by punching someone against Bruges, giving him a left hook. He said he never did them, but it was a good left hook. Just shook him off or something, you know. So yeah, it was a remarkable season that season. And then I can remember my father came over to watch the cup final against we played Aberdeen at Parkhead, because Hampden was shut, and we went 2-0 up and they scored late on, and we were struggling a wee bit just with the length of the season, because we must have played like 65 games.
I remember that as well. Lee Richardson scored a late one for Aberdeen. It was was Haitley. I think Neil Murray scored first for us. So.
Neil scored, and it was just it was a good way to finish it off, winning the treble at Parkhead. So I was the only captain to pick up 2 trophies at Parkhead.
Yeah. I even remember at that early age.
That's what I say to kids Celtic supporters on. They said, where was your favourite ground? I said, Parkhead, one of my favourite grounds, because I picked up a couple of trophies there, and enjoyed many victories there as well. So it was good times.
Richard, just as we wrap this up, I'm going to ask you a couple of quick questions. I like to do this.
Sure.
You've already told us your favourite moment was 3. That you said that it was when you signed, when you became captain, and when you lifted the 9th league title. Can you tell us your favourite goal?
It's probably the header against Celtic in 9 in a row, because they come to us, and they were a decent team then. I mean, in the early years of 9 in a row they were strong. In the middle years of 9 in a row they weren't too strong, from maybe say 92 to 95, but from 95, when Tommy Burns took over at Parkhead, they got better players. Got the Canios and Van Hooydonks and Cadets, and all the better players, and that they were a match for us then. And they were good games. There were some terrific games from 95 to through 98, great games. And but we just still had the edge. We still had the edge over them. And they came to us on the 9 in a row season, first Old Firm game that year, and George Alberts put a great ball in, and I headed it top corner, And I can always remember the commentary after, you go home and you watch Match of the Day or whatever it is, and Billy McNeil, he was doing the co-commentary.
Yeah, with Jock Brown.
With Jock Brown, and he had said something like, you should be neutral, really. Billy, he's like saying, we all know how good Richard Gough is, and how can they let him have a run on the ball?
That's right.
It was a great header. He says, a great header. He says, but shouldn't have happened, because
it's funny because it's just went the anniversary of that goal again, and every year it comes up, and I still think it's one of the best headers I've ever seen.
Yeah.
So it's a great header. But what about a favourite goal not against Celtic? Do you have one? Because I had a funny feeling the Celtic ones might have been a highlight.
Yeah, and the other one for me was a huge one, was my first game as a captain for Rangers in the cup final.
League Cup final.
Yeah. It goes to extra
bounce
time, and a big between Morris and Bonner. So someone was up there was looking down on me. I always think, that's at the Rangers end as well. So just happy days. So, but no, I had a good ones for Rangers, a few European ones, good ones. Scored against Dortmund, scored
in Juventus in that night from a free kick. Do you remember that one?
Yeah, Juventus. Scored. That's what I tell all my Italian friends when I said, by the way, who do you support? They said Juventus. I said, I scored in the, and they just like, no Scottish people scored against Juventus. And they asked me the score, and I said it was 4-1. Yeah, still scored. Still scored in the stadium.
What about favourite win?
Favourite win?
Yeah, if there's one victory.
One victory stood out. Maybe a treble against Aberdeen as well. That was, a big one. To get us a treble that year at Parkhead, after an incredible season.
Yep.
That was probably one of the biggest games,
Favourite teammate?
Never really had one. As I was close to most of the boys. I was close to all the boys. I never, I wouldn't say there was anyone
in particular,
but I've been asked if, other than say myself in the dressing room, who would you say would be the biggest influence in the dressing room? And that I like having around, I always say it would be Alistair McCoist. You know, and then I know people say, Christie's just, you know, a lot. But he was the life of the dressing room in a lot of ways. You know, and sometimes when the dressing room was down and come, you know, you could lift it up quite quickly. You know, so I had a good. He was a good friend of mine, and he still is a good friend of mine. You know, so yeah, he I think we helped each other a lot of the times in the, you know, in the good times and the bad times.
We had a great dressing room at that point. Who's the biggest style icon? Because I've seen a few suits. Mark Catley talks about a few suits that he's worn and stuff. Who had the best fashion?
During that time, I think.
Because there's a famous story about you saying to Gaza, don't you touch my suits and stuff.
And
so.
You're saying, I don't do Marks and Spencer, you know what I mean? Like winding me up, you know what I mean? But Mark was very stylish. But it was funny enough, Basil Bolly came to training the first day when he signed, and he had a white tracksuit on and a COS tracksuit or something, whatever it was. And I said, Basil, you know, we shirt and tie at this club. We have to wear the shirt and tie, you know. So he says, Richard, come on. He says, I scored the European Cup winning goal last year, you know. You know, So next day he came in with the white suit, the white tracksuit on again, but just with a tie. Yeah. You know, so we were all laughing. He was a great guy, Basil. Didn't do so well for us, but he was a great guy. And I said, Basil, no. I said, the manager's going to fine you, you know what I mean? So the next day he came in, and from that day onwards, he was the smartest guy in the. He had the handkerchief coming out. He had the you know, brilliant suits, and he was just. But he loved it, you know. And a lot of the players who came from, you know, from abroad, they loved the collar and tie, coming into training with a collar and tie on. Like it was like going to work, you know. Yeah, it was strange, you know. So I'd have to say Basil, closely followed by Big Mark.
Final question. You're going to hate this. I'm sure people have asked you 100 times. Gascoigne or Laudrup? And I was privileged to see them both, and I loved them both.
Yeah, I loved them both as well. You know, I mean, I think, you know, I would have to say, I flip the question on you. If I had someone, you know, playing for my life, if my life was at stake, you know, and I had someone, you know, I would say Gascoigne, you know, just because he had such incredible ability that he could really win a game by himself, you know, and he was so confident, he was overconfident. But Laudrup as well, very similar, but just on a quieter thing. But if my life was on the stake and I thought, you've got some player to win a game for you, I would take Gascoigne.
Richard, thanks so much for your time. I think we could have sat here for hours and discussed that era and discussed Rangers currently. I know you were at the game yesterday, had a pretty dramatic ending, but let's hope that we return to that era that you had, because it was exceptional. Thank you for everything. You were a tremendous Rangers captain.
Thank you.
And watching you was a real privilege growing up, and thank you for your time today.
Okay, thank you, Stevie.